thank you so much for this time we have, this awesome little group. I ask your blessing on all of these people who are, in my opinion, more diligent than most people to actually know your heart through your language, through your precious alphabet. And ask you, I know you'll open our hearts and you'll send your Ruach to open our minds and listen to Erik's great words. Good stuff. Thank you, Father. In Yahushua's name. Amen.
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 I just want to say one thing right out of the gate here. Years ago, there was this lady named Laura Westville in Scotland, and she sent us this little embroidery thing that she's made here. And SEW artists, so artists. Laura West. I had brought up the fact that we were going to talk about Psalms 139, and Kurt had put on, I had heard that it was called the Rainbow Scriptures. Did anybody else get that, or has anybody seen that?
No.
No? So Kurt, I sent you back a note that you might want to make it available. Somebody a few years ago, it's been around, they have the Paleo, the Modern, the Greek, the English. They have each word in a different color. I think they have strong numbers on there too. And what's that?
Pearl Rhodey has a copy of it. She keeps putting it on Facebook every week. Pearl Rhodey. Yeah.
Pearl Rhodey. Yes, she's up in Canada. And there's a couple different translations in English. One's right out of the Greek, I think, and the other one's from the Hebrew. The point is, if you look at that, it's just another way to read it, and it looks like, boy, they've really got it exact, and yet my take on these things is completely different. So whatever you want to make of that, it's like, why would that be the case? But it's interesting to see, and whoever did it, Kurt, what you sent me, or Pearl, it's all of the Psalms. And if you punch on 139, you'll see this one we're talking about today. And I think it was 2 weeks ago, I started to go through 139. I believe I got through this first, what I called the 7 letters correlating to the structure of 139. Did any of you guys get a chance to look at that? Or has anybody looked at Psalms 139 and found what I would describe as the alphabet pattern within the narrative? When I say the narrative, I'm saying if you're just reading Psalms 139, verse 1 all the way through, it's like, what's he talking about? Where's the alphabet? It's not synchronized to 22 verses with 22 letters. There's actually 24 verses, but this is just one of those places where I think it's really interesting, and that's what I was going to talk about. Did anybody do that?
I didn't do that, but I did look at the Psalm and scriptures in Bereshit quite often, and an understanding that I'm starting to get from reading those scriptures and then going and reading the Psalm. And I ran into coming to the verse 11 and then verse 12. Really, in my mind, in my thinking and understanding, illuminated some things regarding Or and Koshek.
So could you read your translation? Because when I start going through this, it's not going to fit anybody's English translation.
Well, you use Stone's Tanakh, correct? Or
yes.
Is that what you're using?
Yeah, but no, what I'm going to talk about today has nothing to do with Stone's Tanakh. I'm going to look at
okay. So here's 11 and 12, verse 11 and 12, Psalm 139, and out of Stone's Tanakh.
Okay.
Would I say, surely darkness will shadow me, then the night would become as light around me. Verse 12, even darkness obscures not from you, and night mind. Oh, I'm serious. That's not it. Okay. Verse 12. Even darkness obscures not from you, and night shines like the day. Darkness and light are the same. Those are the
Okay.
two verses. I can continue reading, but those are the two verses. 11
Well,
and
I
12.
just wanted to, before I jumped into what I see here, did anybody else have anything that they took out of this chapter that you want to bring up before I bring this whole other particular regard to light? Mark, did you get anything from your, other than, you might say, other than the obvious? Your mic is off.
No, I didn't get a chance to study it, so. I got
Okay.
busy.
Well, should I just get into it, or
Eric,
does anybody else?
the word wonderful is mentioned twice. Yeah, it's Paul. The word wonderful was mentioned twice, so I'm counting that's paleo in this chapter. The word
Yeah, I noticed
wonderful.
that too.
It's actually 3
Such
times.
knowledge is too wonderful for me. Yeah, okay, yeah. I
That's
noticed it
in
twice,
verse
so I
6.
thought
It's
verse
Paleo.
6, yeah.
not only verse 6, but it's also, the word is twice mentioned in verse 14. Did you notice that?
Yes.
I did. I wrote paleo there.
So
I praise thee for I'm fearfully, wonderfully made. Yeah. We're
Again,
paleo made, yes?
my take on how I'm going to render this chapter is completely different. It's like talking to a people in a foreign language. So this is the way I'm going to talk to this people, Israel, line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little. So that's a whole interesting study, which maybe we could do next week. I know we talked about doing the 10 Commandments, but I just spent quite a bit of time looking at some things in that few chapters of Isaiah, which are pretty amazing. Maybe it's Isaiah 25, 28, actually. Isaiah 28:10. But just to say that plays into 139 pretty wonderfully. But sometimes the study of like, what do I determine to look at? I know Mark goes with the parashah reading, which of the week, which is also then the half Torah. I don't follow that. I don't put it down, but I'm not following that, meaning that the things that I choose to study are rather whimsical, or I just happen to look there, led by the Ruach, you might say, hopefully, but I'm not a proponent of one versus the other. I'm just saying I happen to look at this thing caught my eye, and what I saw in the reference of the word paleo, that in Psalms 139, verse 6, it says, such knowledge is too wonderful for me, inaccessibly high. How can I, or I am incapable. How can I contain it? Or I'm incapable of it. Knowledge is beyond me, exalted, I am incapable of it. That's the translation of Stone's Tanakh. And it's like, well, wait a second. Knowledge is beyond me. So here they took the word paleo and translated it as, in fact, they didn't even translate it here in Stone's Tanakh. If you take the verse literally, knowledge is beyond me exalted. It says paleo da'at mameni, and then nun shin gimel bet means is inaccessibly high, very strong, glorified, exalted, praise, set on high, or to find protection and loftiness. So they're saying here, the translator is saying knowledge is inaccessibly high. Knowledge has found protection in its loftiness, as if to say knowledge is unattainable. It's left to the discretion of the translator. And some translations might be inherited from the Septuagint or Stone's Tanakh, which is, Hebrew rabbis Jewish rabbis have said, look, we've studied this thing for 3,000 years. We know what it says, so just trust us. Okay. But any one of us can look at this and say, well, who's speaking? What's the subject? What's the verb? What is the action of any word upon any other word? And I suggest that it's a little bit more open-ended than we've been led to believe. I was taught by some people, instructors, teachers, scholars, people with divine revelation, that King James is the quintessential authorized version. Michael Hoggard, I think, was the guy who came and did a lecture in Portland with the Prophecy Club, and he was saying how the King James Version is refined 7 times, so it's the pure, distilled, all the crud taken out of it. Other translations come like a wild vine, and he's saying it's rightly divided, the word of truth. Rightly divided meaning anointed and decreed from on high, ordained chapters, verses, and book order. Okay, that's his perspective, and his whole talk was on the supremacy. King James Authorized Edition. I think one person was even talking about the Cambridge edition was even the better one. You could do English gematria out of it. The point is, the word paleo means wonderful, hidden, marvelous, ancient, but it's not in this translation. Knowledge is beyond me, exalted. Are they saying the word paleo means beyond? No. Wonderful knowledge? Why doesn't Stone's Tanakh say wonderful knowledge? So what I'm saying is the word paleo even specifically translated? And I've found numerous English translations where there's other words added, and like this, words seem to disappear. And every once in a while I make a mistake, and maybe I've made a mistake, but this is what's written here, Psalms 139:6. So is it saying that knowledge is the subject, and so the wonderful hidden memeni means from me? But if I see the structure of the language, and the reason I'm talking about this, and I will elaborate this verse more than other verses. We could talk about other verses if you want in particular, but the whole point of these videos is to put the original text, the original language, Yahuwah's own voice, his own writings of his finger, into your accessible consciousness. Make it accessible to your consciousness as a human being of any country, of any nation, of any language. As we mentioned, that book that Colin made available to us said that the great conflict through the ages for 2,000 years, and especially the last 1,000 years, especially between the Protestants and the Catholics, has been access to the words. That the Protestants say it has to be written in Scripture, but who's writing it? King James? Tyndale was killed for what he wrote, and then they borrowed what he wrote and turned it into the King James Bible. But for years, up until even the days of King Henry VIII of England, it was illegal to speak the Bible, to speak Bible words in English, in the English language. It was illegal. Other people were not allowed to read the Bible, that it was chained to the pulpit or not available at all. If anybody went to touch it or read it, they could have their hands cut off, their eyes poked out. What I'm saying is, over the centuries, having access to the words has been very exclusive. And those who had access kept others away. So to actually take the words written in Hebrew and Paleo Hebrew, which I think is the original inscription, and to hand it to the world and make it comprehensible, well clarified. And I say that on purpose. There's a verse that Moshe was told, make these words, those words in particular at that time, they were supposed to take rocks and put plaster and then write the words in the plaster and make them well clarified for the people to read. That this is not common. This is not atypical. This is very unusual. And for centuries, people of the earth have been denied access to these words. You know, I mentioned before how people from the Nez Perce in the days of Chief Joseph came from Washington, Idaho, northwest area of the United States, walking all the way to St. Louis to meet up with Americans because they heard that they had the book from heaven and they weren't given it and they had to leave with nothing but trinkets. And there was a famous speech how they said, "We will languish and die. Gee, thanks a lot. You've given us, you know, goofy little knickknacks and we came for the book of heaven." So here's the book of heaven. And what this effort, this endeavor to have these talks, to meet on Shabbat, to put up videos that we do at Sukkot and other times, and to make these videos is to make the book from heaven, the Sefer of Hashemayim. And it was whether that's the constellations, there's a verse here talking about that. It's Yahweh's own finger, his own mouth, his own face in these letters. And I'm trying to do everything possible to show you how to read these words. And right here, Psalms 139:6, it's beyond me exalted, I'm incapable. Absolutely not. Completely disagree with that translation. And yet, I think you could probably look at any English translation, whether it's the Jewish Stones Tanakh, whether it's the JPS, Jewish Publication Society, whether it's Stern's Jewish Bible, whether it's authorized or unauthorized. I don't know of anybody that's translated this any differently. I haven't searched very far, but check it out. I did look at even in the Rainbow Bible, and I can't take my time looking at those verses because of the way they're translated. Even the Aleph Tav Sefer. I've spent time looking at verses in the Hebrew, and then I look at the Aleph Tav Sefer, and it's like, sorry, I can't use it. It's too limiting. I have to see the words in Hebrew. So here, when it says the first word, Pe Lamed Aleph Yod Hey, Peleia. Doesn't say paleo because vav is the o sound, which is the suffix, and this is the hey, which is to express or reveal. But it's the same pele, hidden, wonderful, marvelous, da'at. So let's just say that pele is an adjective describing knowledge. This knowledge is wonderful, hidden, marvelous, astounding. Mameni means from me, or the mem prefix can mean a place of or away from. So I could say it's beyond me, but wait a minute. The word mem nun yod means apportioned, fate, or destiny, as if it's saying it's assigned to me. And then the word many is chance and luck. That's where, you know, the Canaanite deity. But it also means to sign up for a subscription. And it's the appointed ration or share or my lot in life. So I could choose to read this verse as saying, it's not that it is from me, though it could be read as that, mameni, but also it was given to me as Yahuwah's offer. By his grace, he's saying, here, would you like this? It's like, yeah, sure. In fact, by these videos, everyone watching these videos or caring to study is offered the same thing. Because the word kufresh aleph, kara, which means learn how to read scripture, also means to happen to be invited or summoned to a meeting by chance or serendipitously, where it's like, hey, guess what? We're learning how to read scripture, which is exactly what these videos are. So all these videos are kufresh aleph. You're invited. Will you take it up? And as I came on here earlier, Mark was talking about inviting people, and some show up and some don't, and some prepared and some aren't, and some care and some don't. And it's like, okay, we'll bump into that later in this chapter where it's totally up to you. So here I could say the wonderful hidden beauty of this knowledge is assigned to me by chance, allotted portion taken on as a subscription where I have to sign my name and say, yes, I'm going to do that, appointed ration or share. Well, that means it is mine. Whereas the translation says it's beyond me, I can't attain it. No, it was offered to me, which means Yahweh will make it accessible to me. And then the next word, noon, Shin Gimel Bet Hey. Well, Shin Gimel Bet means inaccessibly high, very strong, glorified, exalted, praised, set on high, or found protection in its loftiness, which again is describing the knowledge and the fact that he's held it hidden all these years out of reach of the scholars, the princes of academia, of ecclesiastical hierarchy, of politics and religion, or anybody that would deny anybody else, anybody that's been in a position to deny the world the reality of this. He's kept this stuff out of their hands and away from them, but given it to us here and now, 2021. Sally has her hand raised. Yes? Want to turn your mic on? Did you have something you wanted to say?
Hi. Yes, I just wanted to, I don't mean to interrupt. I just was looking at the what you were talking about in Mem Nun Yod and what you're describing, and what I was kind of wondering about is that order of the letters in the order that they're placed here, Mem Nun Yod. So with the Mem prefix, it's almost as if he's like, well, we'll be impregnated with his word to that Mem being that incubation and nurturing area, and then the birthing. So for us to the birthing and then his hand. So it's just kind of what I was kind of seeing in that. And so that's different than saying it's beyond me. It's like you were saying, given to us, given to me. And for that noon to that, Mem to noon, and by his hand, it's all designed by him for us to partake of, nurture, and then birth that illuminated truth.
That exact concept is going to show up in a couple other verses. So it's good that you brought that up. And the other interesting thing about that is to say scientists, by job description, go out and search the world, search the universe, and they look at evidence, they look at things, and then they try to determine, why is it so? Why is the grass green? Why is the sky blue? Why does voice travel through the air? Why is voice affected if there's a fire in between the speaker and the listener or something? And so they look at stuff happening and they say, what do we make of this? They look at artifacts and try to determine ancient history. But these two letters, Mem Nun, are from within. As she was saying, it speaks of a pregnancy. It's the festival of Shavuot, counting a gestation period of a planted seed growing from within until it pops out of the ground and is made evident. So that right there is a clue of how Yahuwah hid this from other people, from the scientists, from the scholars. And because Mem Nun follows Kaf Lamed in the alphabetic order, and Kaf Lamed, we've appropriated by the Mishkan pattern to the Torah, to Kaf being the open hand, but it's like lines of instruction, and it's like lines of furrows in a field. And the Lamed is like a hoe, but it also means teach and learn. So it's planting the seed, and Yeshua gave us this correlation of every word of Yahweh is a seed planted within us, in our heart. And the word for heart is Lamed Bet, pronounced love, where we get the English word love, but it has to do with Lavav, Lamed Bet Bet. Bet Bet is a gateway, so it's the gateway of our passions. And so the memming is like a pregnant mother who's trying to nurture this baby within her as it's developing until it's birthed, and then it's outside of her, and now it has its own responsibilities to build itself. But there's this concept of Yahweh gives us a word in Yeshua's parable about the sower and the seed, and that there's the condition of the soil, whether it was rocky, whether it was trodden on, whether the birds ate it, or whether it's on fertile soil, is each one of our attitudes. So the attitude of each of us regarding the seed regarding our vulnerability, our accessibility, our mind, our disposition of how we're going to nurture the seed that he allows to be thrown into the furrow of our heart is going to determine what we get out of this. Very particular to notice the alphabetic letter sequence, these two letters, mem, nun, what letters come before, the psalmic coming after being the tree that sprouts up and produces branches, which bears fruit that looks like the ion, which is eaten by the mouth, the pay. The alphabetic letter sequence, if you don't see it, you won't get this. So for me to say, have any of the other translators ever done this? I don't know. But if you don't see the Mishkan pattern, if you don't see the alphabetic pattern, if you don't see Yeshua in the Aleph Bet, you'll miss all this. And if no one else has taken this matter of the alphabetic sequence, which I'm going to overlay onto Psalm 139 and show you this mind-blowing thing, then you won't get the same insight. You'll get some other translation value. Anyway, to go on to the last three words, it says, lo, okal, la. So lamed aleph is the word no. But even if you didn't know, K-N-O-W, that lamed aleph meant no, N-O, lamed is the shepherd's staff, the picture, like the hoe, and aleph is the ox head. So a shepherd's staff with an ox head. Well, that's like a stick driving the ox. So you could say lamed aleph means the authority driving the energy. And I say that because the word aleph lamed, the opposite spelling of the two letters, also means no. So, but aleph lamed can also, pronounced L, be translated as simply meaning God, but it also can mean motion toward. So if you're just looking at the pictographs, a shepherd's staff and an ox head, well, if you have lamed aleph, who's to say it's different than aleph lamed? Sometimes the words, you could take the spelling of the same letters and reshuffle them or turn them backwards, and they mean something completely different. In this case, it's exactly the same, but aleph lamed could mean something different, but lamed can look like a fish hook and aleph like an ox head. You don't catch an ox with a fish hook. What the heck? We could elaborate on that little thing, and sometimes we've spent hours, like at Sukkot or different meetings at a week-long festival of unleavened bread, talking about these things, and there's great value. But I have to proceed with the chapter here. But I'm just saying, to answer Randall's question of last week, how do you know what to do with this? Even if you didn't know how to translate, oh, I recognize that lamed aleph means no, nay, never, non, it's a non-event. It's still a strong authority. So your parent is the one who says no when you're a little kid, and you learn that one of the first words any kid learns is no. The word aleph, vav, kaf, lamed, and I went over this, I think it was 2 weeks ago. Aleph, kaf, lamed means to eat, consume, devour, or it's food. But aleph is a prefix, I am, I will, I can, and then I have to know the structure of the language. If I look up in the dictionary, hey, yod, kaf, haika, it means how. This isn't hey, yod, kaf, this is aleph, vav, kaf, lamed. So what I'm saying is that part of the mechanism of doing this translation is to realize that just because there's a kaf in the middle, and I know other prefixes and suffixes and what the effect the lamed has when it's next to the kaf, all of a sudden, the more you know about the language, you can start messing around with the words like Mr. Potato Head or an erector set. You're given the nuts and bolts, and once you realize how they all go together, like chemistry, add an electron, take an electron away, and you've got another element that you can start bonding together. It's all just messing around with science. You have to treat these words like a science experiment, is what I'm saying. And so the same way scientists might say, what makes a plant grow? What makes a word be composed? And so, though I know that it means I can kaf lamed, everything, I can all, but aleph kaf lamed without the vav means eat or consume or devour. So I'm looking at this and saying, I can eat. But if yod, hey, yod, kaf means how, this is a similar, Hey Yod Kaf Lamed. So now I've taken off the Aleph Vav and replaced it with Hey Yod, and it means capacity, power, prevail, contain it all, and it means temple. By the way, I noticed that I was mentioning something about Isaiah 43 last week, and I thought it meant this is the teaching regarding the temple, and the word temple was this word Hey Yod Kaf Lamed. It's not. It was Habet, Hey Bet Yod Tav, just to make that clarification when we were talking with James Ralph. Anyway, and then Lamed Hey means to her, by her, of her, for her. But the Hey, though it's the feminine suffix, the Vav is a masculine suffix. Sometimes it's translated as you or they or it's it. So you have to take a step back and then get a feeling. And the feeling, now very subjective, is how can I eat all this? Or I can't consume of it. But I could say, how can I contain it? Or how can I grab it and hold it and keep it to myself? So I translate this verse as this paleo knowledge that's been assigned to me by chance, by Yahweh calling. And remember, he said to Isaiah, I believe it was, I can't find anybody to do this. Who can I send? And Isaiah said, hey, why don't you send me? I'll do it. It's like, you know what you're in for? Isaiah ended up being killed by being sawn in half. Rough duty, amongst other life travails. But just because we volunteer for something in Yahweh's service doesn't mean it's going to be, warm and fuzzy, just so you know. But I did volunteer, and he did give me this, and this is what I see. So that's what we're talking about. And it's so wonderful to find protection in its loftiness. How can I keep this to myself? I'm not going to eat all of this. It's way too much. And so this reminds me of the story of the time when there was a siege. I believe it was on Jerusalem, and people were starving and eating pigeon dung and eating their own children. And the lepers, 3 lepers, I think it was, went out and said, we're going to die here. Let's just go see if we can bum some food off our enemies, or at least they'll kill us and get it over with. And they go out there and find that Yahuwah had made a great noise and scared them all away. And they left everything and ran as fast as they could and dropped everything on the ground. And the lepers started eating so much. It's like, this is a feast. We can't possibly eat this. It's all going to rot. Let's just go back and tell the city. And the people that scoffed, there was one man who scoffed, oh, this can't happen. He was trampled to death by the stampede of people coming out of the city to the enemy camp to eat and consume and make use of everything that Yahweh had brought to his people for their provision by the hand of the enemy under the guise of threat. The enemy was a real threat, but Yahweh used that threat to give provision to his people. And there's a mind of an attitude, which this chapter is about, which you're going to bump into very particularly in a few other verses. But I'm trying to use this verse to establish, if we think, oh, this is beyond me, I can't attain it, then that's your lot in life. And if we take on the mind that says, oh no, he gave this to me, it's absolutely mine and I can have it, and there's so much that I'll give it to everybody else too, then that's the reality. So our reality of what we think of Yahuwah and who we think he is and how we think he relates to us and how viable is the covenant that he gave our forefathers specifically to Israel, for us specifically of this generation, of this timing. If I choose to believe that this is a spectacular occasion of his provision, then that's the reality that we're going to experience. And if I choose to think, oh no, he just brought us out here to tribulate us, as if there wasn't enough graves in the 20th century, he brought us to the 21st to kill us here and now by some kind of a nasty virus that isn't even a virus. Huh? Yeah, there's more to it than that. So anyway, here's the point. We started going on last week, 2 weeks ago. I'll just reiterate real quick in case anybody hasn't seen that. So when I saw that verse 30, 139, verse 6, Psalms, and I thought, wait a minute, there's something going on there. This paleo is so wonderful. What paleo? What's David talking about? So I thought, well, I'll just look at the whole chapter, or maybe part of the chapter. So I started with verse 1. And I'm thinking, one of the things I've done in the past, and this is an explanation answering Randall's question about how do I do this? What am I looking at? What mechanism, by what authority am I plugging Aleph into verse 1 or Bet or Gimel, not necessarily associated with per verse, but just these random ideas? It's you have to know what the letters mean. And if you know what the letters mean, what makes sense, or can you see a correlation? Again, very subjective. So the first phrase says, "Oh Yahweh, you have scrutinized me, and you know." Well, then we're starting off, so I'm going to just plug that into the Aleph position. There's other ways to do this. That's a whole nother story. I've seen times when things do not follow the alphabetic sequence, but it almost seems like a certain phrase is the perfect expression of a different letter. And then another phrase, another letter, and another phrase, another letter. And then I take those letters in sequence and look them up in the dictionary, and wow, amazing. It actually spells a word which is talking about the subject that those letters, that passage happened to be talking about. It's just kind of a mind-blowing orchestration. But if I'm saying, Elohim, Yahweh, you're up there watching, and you know. That's kind of this big Aleph concept. Elohim in the heavens, who knows, who watches. Okay, where's the ox head? Aleph is ox. Aleph is drawn like an ox head, but there's no ox head here. There's this concept of Elohim. Who is he and what is he doing? He's scrutinizing us. There's other verses that talk about Yahuwah plumbing the depths of our souls to know what's in us. And if we say, oh yes, I will be your man, I will be your people, I'm going to love you. And he says, oh yeah? And he starts cranking up the heat and making stuff happen. And gosh, we just start cursing and swearing and spitting in his face and doing everything to get away from him. But what's this planet for? What's this life for? It's to find those who say, yes, I'd like to be on your team, and then refine us to be usable, of great valuable treasure to him. And he uses the circumstances of the dang car won't work. I'm in a hurry. This jerk's in front of me. The guy won't pay me. This guy ripped me off. This guy lied to me. My own wife can't be tolerated, or whatever it might look like. Ow, my finger, it's betrayed me. It's whatever it might be. That's life on earth. That's what we're doing here. We're not here to have a good time, apparently. Oh, that's what it looks like, and maybe we'll have a good time, but why are we here? Why does this planet exist? Why are we taught as little kids, oh, learn how to be athletic and learn how to count and read and learn how to make some friends and then have a wonderful life, and then have it all turn against you and explode in your face and cause you nothing but pain and torment? It's to refine us to be useful to Yahweh for what's coming next, essentially. That should be part of the story, but that's a different matter. I'll proceed, but I'm just trying to say, I'm trying to show you what's Aleph. Oh, Yahweh. First of all, that's his name, and he's the guy there. And you have scrutinized me. That's the word het kuf resh, which is a whole different thing we can look at. And you know, okay, he knows. That's establishing Alephness. And then he says, you know my sitting down. Well, as I said before, the letter bet looks like a resh, straight backbone with the head, and it sits down. Sitting down. Okay, it just, bet looks like it's sitting down. That's all. Gimel, and rising up. Well, Gimel is the head and neck of a camel, and it means to rise up, or it means to be lifted up in loftiness. So I'm just associating that little phrase with that letter. So here's Aleph Bet Gimel. What do you know? Next letter by default is Dalet. So it says, you Bennett, Bet Nun Tav He, Benata, my thoughts, resh ayin, from afar. You know my thoughts, or you know, it doesn't say no, but yet bet noon means to understand. But bet noon is a house, or excuse me, bet is a house. Bet noon is the word for son, S-O-N, the son of a house. With that, you know, something about the construction of my thoughts. Resh ayin is also evil, it's friend, it's associate. You know how everything is built in my head for what I'm doing. Who are my friends and who am I trying to take advantage of? Because resh ayin is friend and associate, companion, but it's also evil, wicked, harm, and calamity. So what's evil? This is an evil pen because it's objects are not evil. Evil is what we think about our associates, our companions, our friends, our neighbors. It's all resh ayin. Thought, noise, shout is resh ayin. So think about that. To think and things you shout about and make a noise is resh ayin, but it's also friend and companion. That's resh ayin. But it's also evil, wicked, harm, and calamity. That's resh ayin. So the way to say, well, to put all that together, it's like evil is what I think to do harmful to my associate, companion, neighbors. That's evil. And he's saying, you know how I'm putting all that stuff together in my head, the ironing in my resh ayin, from afar, mem resh chet vav kuf merachok. Chet vav kuf is a rung of a ladder. Mem resh is bitter. Resh chet, where we get the word ruach, resh vav chet, or scent, like S-C-E-N-T, fragrance on the wind is resh yodhet, reek. So if something reeks, it smells, it has an odor. So what I'm saying is we could sit here and you might on your own time ponder, but I'm just saying this is in the Dalet. This is a door. There's something about this phrase lining up with the letter Dalet. What gets into me? Why does this line up with Dalet? My thoughts concerning my bitterness of my friends, and then how I construct it and put that together. I'm now contemplating, being about this Dalet equivalence. So what I'm saying is that, and I'm showing you this for a reason here, that if I assign the letter Dalet to this phrase, because it's this fourth concept and I can lay it into this order, I'm throwing this, think of an index, think of here's a ruler, which is clear, and see it's got lines on it. And if I were to assign 22 places these lines, and then I lay it over the text, it's like, hey, look at this index device is just laying over. This is like a skeleton laying over the text, and it lines up with the Dalet. So now I'm just going to contemplate, why should this phrase be associated with a Dalet? I'm just messing around. It's all subjective, but it fits. And this is what I'm going to do exactly with the entire rest of the chapter, showing you how it fits to the alphabet. And that's the most mind-blowing, wonderful thing about this exercise, which I was just going to show you today. So, and I'm elaborating in some detail the first few letters so that you can get it, so that what I'm doing in a few minutes here won't be too mysterious. So the next letter is hey, because it's the next letter in sequence, and the next phrase says, you encompass my path and my repose. So I could just read this as David writing a poem. I'm assuming David wrote this. David's just writing a poem. David's writing words of a song. And he happens to say, you know my thoughts from afar, and you encompass my path and my repose. It's like, okay, so if I was reading that as just a poem or lyrics, it's like taking a rock and skipping it over the surface of a lake. The rock bounce, 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 bounce until it sinks. Okay, just having fun, whoop-de-doo. But if I stop and go, wait a minute, no, I'm gonna I'm going to say, how does that line up with the letter hey? Now I've put a screeching halt to the rock and saying, why did it touch there? And why did it touch there? And so I'm going to use this scientific calculation of force, mass, gravity, velocity, and the shape of the rock, and skipping over the surface and other surface tension. And how does all this stuff work? So I'm going to scientifically, which is the use of Dalet Ayin Tav. See, the word Dalet Ayin Tav is just translated knowledge. Dalet Ayin Tav, or I think Nun Dalet Ayin Nun, is the word for scientist, one who uses knowledge as a tool to sit there now and try to analyze. And so what I'm trying to show you is that a lot of this effort goes into pondering, thinking. Accountants, they say crunch numbers. Well, we're crunching letters. We're just going through, pondering, thinking, pulling this out and plug it in there and seeing what works. It's like a chef with a recipe, finding just the right balance of flavors. So Mark Gravel is doing that with his Parashah studies, looking at how do the numbers relate, where's the Aleph Tabs, and pulling all this stuff in. It's like, well, who else is doing that? Why would you do that? Because you found by experience that it works. It seems to work, though somebody else may not like it. What has this got to do with the letter Hey? The word encompass happens to be Zayin Resh Yod. Is that the word encompass? I thought the word Zayin Resh means stranger. So if the word Zayin Resh, Zar, Gimel Resh is also stranger, but how does that mean encompass? And then my path or my journey is Aleph Resh Hech, Het, Arech. But Aleph means I will, Resh Het, remember we said that was similar to the word for scent, reek, or Ruach, which is wind or something on the wind, but it's translated path or journey, but it's also an inn, I-N-N, a place or a hotel, a place of accommodations, or to go to a place like a bed and breakfast and get something to eat and a place to sleep. And my repose there is Resh Bet Ayin. So the word for streamline is Zayin Resh Yod Tav. Well, this is Zayin Resh Yod, translated in compass. So to streamline, which is, back in the 1940s, there's a graphic pattern that they used on automobiles and trains, 3 horizontal lines. It's just a graphic typical of that decade, you might say, called streamlines. You streamline my accommodations. Hey, guess what? Graphically, the letter Hey has 3 horizontals with a vertical, but it's just like light beaming. What's that got to do with the letter Hey? For now, let's just say it lines up with the letter Hey, and I can see a correlation. So I'm just locking things in because I'm trying to move on through the text. You can go back and ponder that more. The next letter would be Vav. All my ways, Hey, Samik, Kaf, Nun, Tav, Hey. All of my ways are what? Well, Vav is a connector, like a nut and a bolt, or a hammer driving a nail in to hook something. But see, Hey, Samik, Kaf is the word oiled. Oiled. So like a mechanic oiling the gears so they work. Samik, Kaf, Nun means useful, of benefit, or exposed to danger. Kaf, Nun means yes, so, truly, thus. Samik is something engineered, so it's kind of like engineered to yes calibration, facilitated agreement. So this is saying the Vav. So here's what I'm trying to show you. The fact that I'm seeing all these things line up, then if I say, well, Vav is a nail, Vav is a man, Vav is the Messiah who's Ben Yosef, like Joseph, who was put to the weapon, and then he's later going to be like Ben, the Resh man, Ben David, exalted king. But the fact that now I can overlay these first 6 and then 7, and then I can show you the other ones, means that in an algebraic equation, one of the most simplest algebraic equations, if A equals B, and if B equals C, then A equals C. So if I can say all of my ways are engineered to calibration and oiled to be of useful benefit when exposed to danger, if that lines up with the Vav, if Vav equals, we'll say it again, all of my ways engineered to calibration and oiled to be of useful benefit when exposed to danger. If that equals Vav, then every time I see a Vav used to spell a word somewhere in scripture, I can take on the same mind. Like even the Vav in Yod He Vav He, that he gave us the Torah so that I, as a man, a human walking the face of the earth, exposed to danger, because Vav is right next to the Zion, which is the weapon, put to the weapon, talk about being exposed to danger, it will, hey, be of useful benefit to remember the ways of the Torah so that I can, after the hay in the Zion of the weapon, the chet, this compound, this pasture of Yod Kaf Lamed, hey, I will have the capacity to contain it all and prevail. Well, that's the message written in the alphabetic sequence of the text. But that means every time I see a Vav, I can remember he's got me connected because remember, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zion, to reveal to the man the distinction who is exposed to danger, the capacity to prevail has been provided. So it's taking on a consciousness of what the alphabetic letter sequence has within it. Then the next letter would have to be the Zion, but this is only verse 4. So how can I be at the 7th letter in verse 4? Because these things don't necessarily line up with letter by letter, verse by verse, number by number. So when Michael Hoggard say, hey, the King James Version is every chapter, every sequence of books, because it's a different order in King James than it is in Stone Tanakh, rightly divided. It's like whoever came up with these verse numbers was hundreds and hundreds of years after the verses were actually written. Whether or not the verse numbers are ordained, why are they different in the Hebrew text versus the English text? Whatever, that's a whole different discussion. But what I'm saying is the verse numbers don't necessarily make any difference, especially when you're overlaying the pattern of the letters or even the Mishkan pattern overlaid onto the text. And this is why I've tried to describe before, is that the Mishkan pattern is concepts that you can lay over like this clear indexing over the text. You lay it over it, oh, there, that's how everything lines up. Back in 2004 at Sukkot, provided 75 examples with this clear acetate laid over the text showing each individual piece of the Mishkan pattern. I put it up on the website. I thought it should be there. If not, we'll get it up there. That's one of the things, James, that we need to put on the site. James Ralph is a website guy, by the way, and if anybody could use some help. The point is, the next phrase here says, Ki ani mela be lashoni hen Yahweh yedaat kala. So the word kaf yod means for, thus, when. It's like saying so, or here you go, or when, while, thus, because ein means without. It's not ani, it's ein. It's where we get the word ain't, aleph yod nun. Say it doesn't exist. Then the next word, mem lamed hey. Well, lamed hey means to her. Mem is the place or away from. But malah, if you look up in the dictionary, it's a derivative of mem lamed lamed. So you have to know the structure of how the language works, which is why we keep going over this. You take the second letter of a word and you duplicate it, making it the third. So mem lamed, or mem lamed hey in this case, hey is the feminine suffix, make it mem lamed lamed. And then you can take mem lamed and you can add another mem lamed. I'm on verse 4. Yes, it says decayed, frayed, rub, scrape, edge, fringe, border, hem. So if you have a long pants legs or a skirt and it rubs on the ground and gets ragged, that's the word. But it also means speech or word. What does a decayed or frayed hem of a garment have to do with speech? You have to think about that. There's this word pen mala, mem lamed hey. There's a congregation up in Wisconsin called Corner Fringe, St. Paul, I think. We went to a couple years ago. Corner fringe. Well, the word fringe is not necessarily, oh, that's zizio. It's ragged, rough, frayed threads. It could be zizia at the fringe, but what I'm saying is it's the same as a speech or a word. Speaking. Then the next one, bet lamed shin vav nun. Well, bet lamed shin literally means search, examine, investigate, or to be a detective. Bet lamed shin. Shin vav nun means different. But lamed shin vav nun means tongue, and the last letter as a suffix means my, and it's pronounced balashoni. Balash. Well, that's almost like the word Belushi, like the comedian John Belushi or Jim Belushi. Same root word. So that's even like the Hebrew word. But what I'm saying is, putting all those concepts together, my tongue, different. That's like saying, hey, I have a different language. I speak different. Go back to the beginning. Thus, therefore, or surely, raised hand, kaf yod, there is no speech of a different tongue which can be investigated. Hey nun, behold, Yahuwah, behold Yahweh. But yet the word hey nun or hey nun, hey, hana means hear gladly. Here, look, hear gladly. This is a wonderful thing. Yod dalet ayin tov. Yod dalet means arm, strength, hand. Ayin tov is translated time, but dalet ayin is knowledge, or yod dalet ayin, yada, knowledge. Kaf lamed hey, then the last word means bride, or destroyed, or all of it. But it also means perfection, contain, measure of capacity, or an article of, or a vessel that does contain something. And kaf lamed vav aleph means imprisoned or a curtain bred. So a bride is now not just this young maiden girl who's free to run and go bippity boppity wherever she wants to go, but she's now imprisoned by her husband, and she is contained, you might say. That's I'm just trying to say, if you look at the word kaf lamed hey is kala, and what do you get? So putting this all together, now remember this lines up with verse 4, the Zion. So Zion is not just, oh, to be put to the weapon and now you're dead, but Zion is the halo, the crown, the distinction of, like this word here, kadosh. There's no letter lamed here, but kadosh Yahweh, kadosh to Yahweh. The bride betrothed to Yahweh is the distinction, the crowning Zion. So for an officer to wear a special hat, or to wear a badge, or to have a ceremonial sword or a gun, to be adorned with weapons, is the meaning of the letter Zion. So you got Xena, the warrior princess, the TV show, the movie, the Greek hero and the female hero who had all kinds of weapons. That's the other meaning of the letter Zion, adorned with weapons. So Yeshua was put to the weapon, adorned with the Roman flail, crown of thorns, flesh ripped off him. And Pilate said, hey, isn't this funny what we did to your king? He was made distinctive. So Zion is to be made distinctive. The other meaning of the word kadosh is to be set apart, segregated, separated, made sanctified or sacred. It's to be betrothed, it's set apart, it's unique, it's one of a kind. So this concept of that's what a bride is lines up with the letter Zion. I'm showing you the fit. So I'm going to go faster here through the rest of the text. This whole thing can be elaborated very much. But so this is a way for me to then reread that sentence. There is no word so eroded. So what's frayed? Language and speech. Over the last few thousand years of the permutations of language, there is no speech so eroded or bifurcated like a fork. That's where you get the word for fork, is something branching into like a menorah, like a fork that with the various tines. There's no word so eroded or bifurcated, but that, behold, Yahweh has made knowledge expressed therein. The word, the concept of words that he made from the very beginning of his inventing the universe, words imprison functional nutrition. So, and I'm getting that by saying, I'm going to now translate the word bride 4 different ways. Bride, to be able to contain all of it, but yet destroyed. Kaf Lamed Yod Aleph means to be imprisoned. Kaf Lamed Yod Yod is functional. Kaf Lamed Yod Lamed Khalil is crown, perfect totality or coronary, which is of the heart. Kaf Lamed Kaf Vav Lamed is nutrition. Kaf Lamed Hey is economic provision. So I'm going to take all those things and say Yahuwah has built in the concept of words and language that it contains everything. So for Yahuwah, going back to John 1:1, to invent this one word before he ever built the universe and put everything in that, and then through that, out comes the manifest expression of everything in the universe, and then that word itself, with what he loaded it with, becomes the human Yahusha, the Mashiach, the man of that word made flesh. What an astounding concept. And I can read it right there in verse 4. Last word of verse 4 is Kaf Lamed Hey. And so I'm looking at derivative spellings of Kaf Lamed Hey to come up with this other thing. Okay, so the next concept would be the letter Het. And it says future, past, constraint. Achor is the word future, but also delayed, behind, coming late, next. Kadem, antiquity, past, another synonym of paleo, ancient. But it also can mean a pioneer going out front. And then this word Zadi Resh Tav Nun Yod, preserved, bound, tied up, or sharp rock, constraint. So I can now apply this concept to the letter Het. The letter Het is a fence, a container. Bet is a type of container. Het is a type of container. Just like Vav is a man and Resh is a man, just like Zion is a weapon, Zadi is a weapon. There's things that, there's 2 letters. It's okay. So I could say Dalet is a door, mouth is that, Pei is a mouth that opens, so that's a type of a door also. I'm just saying you have to know what the letters mean. So there's some kind of a container being bound up from the future and the past. Then the next word, Vav Tav Shin Tav. Well, Tav Shin Tav Yod Tav, related word, means foundation, base, or subsoil. Tav Shin means feeble or weak. Shin Tav is a foundation, something set upon. The next word, Ali Kafaka, so it's Kaf Pei Kaf Hey. Well, Kaf Pei Kaf is hand, Pei Kaf is your mouth, like your mouth, expressing, but Pei Kaf Hey means trickling from a flask. Ayin Lamed, where you get the word Aliyah, means to be raised up. And then putting all these words together, it's like, what the heck is he saying? There's something about from the past as well as the future, and some kind of something is contained like a solid, but then it's talking about trickling from a flask, a foundation. Well, it almost sounds like he's talking about gravel. I build things, I make houses and rooms, and you have to have a foundation. And a lot of times you'll use gravel and pack it in, but gravel is a rock that's been broken into little drips that can pour out of a dump truck, a wheelbarrow, a bucket. That's kind of like this concept of letter by letter. It's the same picture, word by word. It's the same picture as getting into Isaiah 28:10, which is here a little, there a letter, line upon line, precept upon precept, which we'll look at another study. What I'm saying is that you read a series of a few words and you look at these other words and you're saying, it seems like he's talking about that the language has been built in such a way that, like gravel pouring out of a bucket as a foundation, words are composed of letters, like little drops that form a bucket of water. letters form words, and that the whole universe is built on atoms composed of electrons. We need to break in a couple minutes there, sure. And then that sets us up, and that's verse 5. So then it goes to verse 6. So I started with verse 6, but I'm just saying that then I take it in sequence, and that lines up with the letter tet, which is a full basket. So to say the full basket of the little bits that are like drips of water or broken gravel is that, oh, this is so wonderful. The knowledge has been held and given to me so that I can have it and eat it bit by bit, bite by bite, bit and bite. That's where you get the similarity of the word in English, drop by drop. The music, note by note, a full basket of provision, the letter tet. Verse 6. And then the letter yod, and we'll stop with this. Aleph nun hey, then Aleph lamed kaf, then mem resh vav het kaf. That middle of that is ruach. Then vav aleph nun hey, that's the same as the first word, so it's similar. And then mem pe nun yod kaf, that's from your face. Aleph bet resh het. Lament, bring about cause toward you, or I will for you, away from, or a place of your ruach. Another lament, away from your face. I will bet rechet, flee, smuggle, bolt, escape. What? It's almost like he's saying, what if, oh no, perhaps I become a groan for you, dishearten your ruach, and provoke your face to flee away, withdraw from regarding me, from finding pleasure in my presence. It's almost like we're saying, what if we so disappoint him and anger him and disgust him that he just leaves? Well, that's what he did. That's what a couple thousand years of human history is all about. And we can see it in the text all over the Bible. That Yahweh says, I'm just going to leave and see if they've noticed that I've gone. They're going to invent their own gods. They're going to worship their own worship. They're going to have all this song and dance and wonderful things, and they're just entertaining themselves, and I'm not even around, but yet they claim that I'm there. And whoever wrote this was saying, what a great travesty if I were to do something, if I did something so stupid, so wrong, so self-centered, so ignorant, that he turned and left, and that may it never be. And that lines up with the letter yod, by my hand, myself. What if I did this? And then we'll get into the other letters, verse 8, which has to do with the letter kaf. So we're halfway through in a moment. But Kurt needs to stop here and